When an Indian does something outstanding and remarkable, all Indians feel proud and honored. When an American does something outstanding and remarkable, all Americans feel honored and proud. When a Chinese does something outstanding and remarkable, all Chinese feel honored and proud. An unknown man from Samaria does something very ordinary and unremarkable in today's gospel. But that act brought pride and honor to all Samaritans. So much so that the English language has adopted the phrase, the Good Samaritan. The parable of the Good Samaritan, Luke chapter 10, 25 to 37, is among the immortal parables of Jesus. It is undoubtedly one of the most straightforward parables. The parable is not just a parable, it is a roadmap. It doesn't call for a lot of analysis, discussion or debate. It calls for action. Go and do the same yourself. The parable is familiar. A man lying wounded by the roadside. Two men who were religiously committed, a priest and a Levite, pass him by, while a third, a foreigner and an untouchable, stopped and helped him. What is most disturbing in the story is that two people who were expected to help him indifferently passed by without showing any compassion. The Levite and the priest were both men in position of power and authority. How could they be so insensitive and indifferent? This indifference to the pain and suffering of others is widespread today. Mother Teresa, in her earlier days, when she was still not known, when the glare of the media was not yet on her, was walking down the streets of Kolkata. She noticed maggots eating something. On getting closer, she found that it was a dying, abandoned man, still breathing, still conscious, still alive. More than shocked, she was enraged. She could not accept that this could happen in a city with a then population of 10 million people. A man still alive, left to be eaten up by worms. We too would feel the same anger and disgust. Some of us would probably call the ambulance or summon TV channels and newspaper reporters, or write letters to the editor in the newspaper, or go viral on social media, condemning the callous attitude of the people and highlight the indifference towards the suffering and the lack of respect and value for human life. Mother Teresa chose to do something different. She went down on her knees, lifted the dying man, and cleaned his wounds. She was inspired by the parable of the Good Samaritan. Go and do the same yourself. Jesus makes the Samaritan the hero of the parable. The majority community at that time was convinced that the Samaritans had compromised their faith. They intermarried with foreigners and therefore tainted their race. They were impure. How could Jesus make a hero out of a Samaritan? This was unimaginable. The road from Jerusalem to Jericho was a dangerous road. The Levite and the priest had justified reasons not to stop and not to help the wounded man. They themselves could be attacked, robbed, and maybe even killed. They presumed that the wounded man was dead. Touching a dead body would defile them and make them impure. The Samaritan was aware that he was hated, yet he brushed aside his fears and doubts and opened his heart to help the wounded man. The Samaritan knew that the wounded traveler would never help him in return, and perhaps not even appreciate his charity. The compassionate heart of the Samaritan could only see the wounds of the man, not his race, not his tribe, not his caste, creed, or religion. He proved that they have no place in charity. Though his concern for the wounded man proved costly, nothing could deter him from giving his best. He did not stop with the minimum help, with first aid. He went beyond and walked the extra mile for the stranger with no expectation of payback. The question the priest and the Levite asked themselves was, what will happen to me if I stop to help the wounded man? The question the Samaritan asked himself was, what will happen to the wounded man if I do not stop to help him out? People today are very cautious about getting involved. Getting involved is a messy business. It disrupts our life. It invites unnecessary trouble. It derails our plans and shatters our dreams. It is much safer and easier to close our heart and go quietly on by the other side of the road. The Levite and the priest are not merely two men in the parable. They represent two sets of mentalities, two sets of attitudes, two ways of approaching life and its challenges. Let us be very honest. At one time or the other, we have all acted like the priest and the Levite, gone quietly by on the other side of the road. We have passed by someone who needed our help. We refused to get involved. We were indifferent. In each case, we have very good reason not to get involved. Sometimes it is our fears, our want of courage, sometimes our prejudices and confused value systems, sometimes our so-called work and commitments, sometimes it is genuine lack of time and resources. Sometimes we expect the wounded person to ask for help. Sometimes we wait for others to take the initiative and make the first move to help. Sometimes we hold back because we are unsure what people will think about us and our moves. Our reputations are at stake. The honest reason most often is that we are too preoccupied with ourselves and our own little worlds. There are many people today who lie wounded on the roadside of life. Their wounds are not always visible. Many of today's deepest wounds are invisible. They are not physical and therefore do not show up on the outside. There are people who are wounded in spirit. A person who has lost his job. A youth coming to terms with betrayal. A depressed person who lost a spouse. A retired person who suddenly feels useless and unwanted. Grieving children who have lost a parent and unable to express their pain. Elderly parents abandoned by their children, all waiting, lying quietly there, not having the strength or the courage to call out for help, waiting for a good Samaritan. Jesus asks us, is your heart big enough to embrace some of these who are wounded? He asks each one of us individually, is your heart big enough to go and do the same yourself? A drop of help is worth an ocean of pity. May we keep discovering Jesus in our wounded neighbor. Amen.